today we are talking about artist Alma Thomas. It is Black History Month, so we will be focusing on Black artists for the next 4 weeks at least. I'm also going to link some videos below of other Black artists that we've talked about in the past so that you can watch those videos too if you're interested. And today we are talking about Alma Thomas. She's one of my favorite artists because of her use of color. She's considered a colorist because of that same reason. And she was born in the late 1800s, and she was born in the South in Georgia. She lived there for a little bit, but her family did move when she was young to Washington, D.C. because of the violence in the South toward Black people. And there was just more opportunity, and although there was still segregation, Black people would be treated at least a little bit better in the capital. So she did move to Washington, D.C. as a young girl. She ended up going to Howard University and she studied art. She was actually their first fine arts graduate. And then she became a teacher. So that's a quick summary of her for a little bit right now before we talk about what supplies we'll need. So first supply you'll need is 2 white sheets of paper. You'll need some blue, green, and yellow watercolor, and some glue, and scissors are optional. So those are our things that we will need today. So let's grab those and then we'll get started. All right, so Alma Thomas made a lot of artworks, and again, she was known as a colorist because she used a lot of color. And she used it, she didn't use it very sparingly. She used bright colors and a lot of them. And she focused most of her art inspiration on nature, which I think is a pretty common theme among artists. But she oftentimes was looking outside. So leaves and flowers, those were things that were pretty big influences to her art. And the art piece we're gonna look at today is called White Roses Sing and Sing. I love the name of it, and when you look at it you can see that there's these little white marks, and those kind of are representing flowers. So she was abstract. Nothing was too perfect or too exact in her later work. She started out her life doing kind of pretty realistic artwork, but she really moved to this more abstract art, and that's what kind of grew her fame. So that's what she's known for. So this artwork in the background, you can see kind of blues and greens. You can imagine kind of a field of flowers. I think that's kind of what it looks like. Or maybe a bush of white roses. So that's what we'll be focusing on today. She said she was always inspired by kind of the light between leaves in a tree. So that's another way you can think about it. So the first thing we're going to do today is take out our watercolors. Take out some water and a paintbrush. And we're gonna dip our paintbrush into our blue and green watercolors. And we can mix them if we want. There's no right or wrong. We are gonna cover a sheet of white paper in just spots of blues and greens and mixed colors of watercolor. So that'll be our first step. And while you're working on that, we'll talk a little bit more about Alma. Alright, so I've covered my whole sheet of paper in blues and greens. It's completely covered, and I'm going to let it dry just for a second. And while I do that, I will tell you a few more details about Alma Thomas. So when we let's look at her painting again, and actually a few of her paintings. So if we look at the one that we're focusing on today, White Roses Singing and Singing, you'll see that there is some blues, greens, and yellows in the background. And then you'll see these small marks of white everywhere, and actually some of yellow too, so look out for those yellow marks. They're really, really small marks. People kind of have compared her to old mosaics from like the Byzantine Empire times, because it does look like it could be little pieces of glass put together. Other people kind of compare her to a form of pointillism, which is lots of little dots. So she uses paint to make these little marks. If we look at this other painting called Azalea Singing and Dancing, same thing. She uses red marks instead of white. And this is kind of her signature style. This is how she was known. This is what got her recognition. A lot of her art is this way. She did some circles that were done this way, a lot of lines done this way. So that's kind of her signature style of art, something that was uniquely hers. She actually was the first African-American woman to be to have a solo exhibition in the Whitney Museum of Art, which is huge. A lot of her painting had found fame in the 60s around the civil rights movement. She didn't necessarily feel that her art was about the civil rights movement necessarily, but it was about joy and finding joy in a really hard time. So that's something to note about her art. So while our piece of artwork has dried slightly, our next step is to grab our second sheet of white paper. So I have mine right here, and we are going to slowly tear little pieces off and just collect them. So just keep tearing little pieces off, and we're gonna do it to the whole piece of paper. So if tearing is not something that you like doing, and if you prefer cutting, you can totally do that too. So scissors are optional. You can cut out strips and cut out little pieces of paper also, but the goal is to get this whole sheet of paper completely cut up or ripped up into little pieces. So let's work on that while our green and blue sheet is drying, and we'll talk about what to do next after that. All right, so I have ripped up about half of my sheet of paper. This is the other half. And I am going to let you guys know what the next step is. So we have our glue, and we're just gonna glue a small section of our paper. Mine is not the best. Hopefully yours is better. I think I left mine out a little bit. It's kind of goopy and dry. So we're gonna glue a section and then stick down, just like a mosaic, just like how she was compared to, little white marks. So again, Alma Thomas would paint these little marks, but we are gonna represent her marks by gluing down, this is not the best, there we go, gluing down some white sheets of paper, and we're going to try to cover our entire sheet of paper that way. If that's a little overwhelming to you, feel free to just do half a sheet of paper, cut it a little bit smaller, but we do want to cover the entire thing in our ripped sheet of paper. So let's get started on that, and we'll come back together after. All right, once you've covered your paper in white pieces like this, then we are almost done. We're on the home stretch. So the last thing to note is when you look at the photo, if you zoom in, there are some sections of yellow paint instead of just the white marks. There are some yellow ones. So we have our white paper here over top our kind of greens. But if we want to just take our paintbrush and stick it into some yellow paint, we can just take sections on here of a few pieces and just paint those yellow. There's some at the bottom, some kind of at the top, maybe a few down here. So we've got a few sections of some yellow papers. Alright, so I hope you learned just a little bit about Alma Thomas. I hope this has also inspired you to check out more of her art, and I'll show you some images of a few more pieces of her art. And yeah, I hope that you just learned a little bit about an artist that maybe you hadn't learned about before. Again, it is Black History Month, so we'll be focusing on other Black artists that are kind of influential to us. And Alma Thomas is one of those. She taught for many, many years. She was a school teacher, and she just influenced a lot of people in art. She really would bring in a lot of speakers, and teaching kind of gave her a chance to do art, but also freed her up to have some income so she could do art on her own on the side. So I think that's really, really cool. I hope when you look at her art, you see joy, and you see what she was trying to convey, which is just that nature is for all of us, and you can find happiness in that even during hard times. I think we can all take some of that wisdom right now. But yeah, she's just a cool person, cool art, kind of the first to do a lot of things. So she's a cool person to study. But I will see you guys again next week. Thanks for doing art with me, and we'll see you with a brand new artist next week. All right, bye.